Residents in Brisbane and Moreton Bay will be released from lockdown despite 5 new locally acquired cases emerging. The stay-at-home order will ease at 6 p.m. this evening, but health authorities are asking residents to continue wearing a mask, getting tested and check in using QR codes. Of the new cases, the first is connected to the Portuguese Community Centre. The second was actually announced yesterday from the Sunshine Coast, a 50-year-old man with the Alpha variety, also linked to the Portuguese restaurant. The third is a worker at the Prince Charles Hospital who has received his first vaccine dose. The fourth, a man in his 50s, a baggage handler who lives in Carindale and works at Brisbane Domestic Airport. The final case is of most concern. It's a 29-year-old man from Brisbane who travelled to the Sunshine Coast, triggering a list of exposure sites. The Chief Health Officer says despite the infections, she is confident of lifting the restrictions.
We've had the last 4 days to really get hold of people and work it through. And because I think Queenslanders know what to do. They've been doing this now for 18 months and we've got more things at our disposal. As I said, a year ago we didn't have masks because there weren't any in the world. We didn't have the QR check-in code. And we didn't know a lot. We were still working through it. We know all that now.
The New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian says the state's lockdown is having the desired effect. Despite 35 new local cases of COVID-19, the biggest daily rise in infections this year. Lydia Feng reports from Sydney.
New South Wales has recorded 35 new locally acquired COVID cases. 9 of those were infectious while in the community, but a majority of those were in isolation. And that, the New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian says, is a huge relief to her. She says that as the lockdown is progressing, she's seeing green shoots appear and is a positive sign as things progress. She says she is pleased to see that there is not a huge spike in COVID cases at this stage. We've also found out that more than 56,000 people were tested yesterday for COVID-19. That is slightly lower than the day before, and so that is why authorities are urging people to continue to get tested. In light of recent transmission in Auburn, New South Wales Health is also advising people who visited Auburn Town Hall on or after 27th of June to get tested for COVID-19, even if they do not have any symptoms. But overall, the New South Wales Premier is pleased with how things are progressing.
The next few days will be telling, but so far I'm relieved that there hasn't been a huge surge in numbers. I'm also relieved that the tide seems to be shifting in relation to the number of people who've been in isolation that are getting the virus as opposed to those who've been exposed in the community, and that's positive news. We should hold on to that. But I don't want to see all our good work ruined today and tomorrow because the weather's great and people are deciding not to follow the orders.
We are now in the middle point of this lockdown and authorities are urging people to maintain the good run that we are having so far. So that is to maintain social distancing rules, to wear a mask and to observe those stay-at-home orders. It is the weekend and it is a sunny day, so they are urging people not to be tempted to go out shopping if it is not essential or to visit other people if that is not essential.
What the community can do is come out and get tested and not try and play with the rules. I think we've been on a journey and everyone knows that outdoor environments are fine. We do need, if you're cooked up and you've got children, take them to a park, stay a distance from anyone else, let them run around. That's a low risk exposure rather than being tempted to allow people into your home or think about other more risky activities of going to retail.
This lockdown in New South Wales is due to end on Friday, but the Premier and the New South Wales Chief Health Officer have still not confirmed whether that will finish on the Friday or will continue further. That, they say, will be announced next week.
More than 2 million people in the Perth and Peel regions have come out of a 4-day lockdown today. It comes as the state records no new COVID-19 cases overnight. Some post-lockdown restrictions will remain for the next 3 days, including mandatory masks. Nicholas Perpich reports from Perth.
More than 2 million people across Perth and the Peel regions have woken up today relieved that the lockdown has lifted. The lockdown finished at midnight last night after 4 days and a total of 5 cases in the northern suburbs of Perth. Already, people have been leaving Perth north and south, the start of the school holidays, 2 weeks of school holidays. People had not been sure whether they would be able to go, but caravans and other families have been heading north to warmer climates in Kalbarri, Exmouth and further afield. However, restrictions still apply in Perth and Peel. People still have to wear masks, and there are capacity restrictions for venues that are reopening, and a maximum of 20 patrons at cafes, restaurants, clubs, pubs. So nightclubs are saying they're not going to bother reopening. 20 is too few. Other venues such as cafes are saying that although they can have seated dining, they're not going to bother quite yet because 20 is not enough patrons, so they're just continuing with takeaway service. The Australian Hotels Association says that this is a financial hit on a lot of businesses and effectively a 7-day lockdown. However, Premier Mark McGowan says that he understands that these rules are tough, but it's necessary because of the Delta strain of COVID-19.
Well, there had been some confusion in the Perth community regarding fitness classes following revised health advice, which Premier Mark McGowan sought to clarify earlier.
Obviously, the whole thing is very fast-moving. So, in the course of any given day, we have to make lots of decisions, and you have to sort of try and think of every situation that you might confront. So, our view was that inside venues, fitness classes were permitted. Turned out the Chief Health Officer had a different view, so we corrected the advice last evening. Now, I know that is difficult for people running those businesses and for lots of people who want to go and do those classes, whether it's aerobics or whatever else it is. But that's the advice at this point in time. Obviously, on Tuesday, we'll be able to, we expect, get back to a more normal situation.
Well, the Northern Territory has also recorded no new local cases of coronavirus. It comes after the lockdown for Alice Springs and Greater Darwin was lifted yesterday. There are no restrictions on leaving home, but residents are required to wear masks while in public and at work when social distancing is not possible. Australians stranded abroad say they are devastated by the National Cabinet's decision to slash the caps on international arrivals. The move will cut in half the number of arrivals to reduce pressure on quarantine systems dealing with the highly infectious Delta variant. But the move has left many Australians, expats, scrambling for answers and fearing they'll no longer be able to get home.
So upset. It's just stress-inducing and kind of gives you anxiety, not knowing, like, are we going to be able to go? Like, and then trying to see what flights are available and finding there's no flights available commercially until like September, October. And even then they're kind of up to £7,000 or £8,000 now. We can't afford paying £8,000 for 2 flights for the next 2 months. It's like, when can we fly back, you know? It's not like, oh, you can just book another one for like the next day. It's not that easy.
While opposition leader Anthony Albanese says the move shows the Prime Minister has no targets or timeline to get Australians home.
Scott Morrison promised Australians that they'd be home by Christmas. And we know that over 30,000 Australians are still stranded overseas. And my heart goes out to them and their families. But this decision is a direct result of that failure. The announcement that's made yesterday, again, the Prime Minister has no targets and no timelines, just a horizon.